73 women and he hadn't blinked at a single one. Yoojun stood against the marble column of the Pierre Hotel's grand ballroom in Manhattan, whiskey untouched in his hand, watching socialites and actresses orbit him like planets circling a dying star. Their evening gowns worth more than his first kill. Their rehearsed laughs timed to perfection. Their hunger disguised as charm, their ambition wrapped in Chanel No. 5. And he felt nothing but the familiar weight of emptiness he'd carried since he was 16. This benefit gala was supposedly raising funds for youth violence prevention. The irony wasn't lost on Yoojun. Everyone in this room knew the real currency being exchanged tonight wasn't money for charity but access to power, connections forged over champagne that cost more per bottle than some families earned in a month, alliances built on whispered promises and unspoken threats. And for the women circling him like predators who'd studied his patterns, tonight was about landing the ultimate prize, a Korean Mafia boss who controlled half of Manhattan's underground and most of its legal real estate too. Yoojun, 31, inheritor of the Beck crime family that had roots deeper than the city's subway tunnels, stood 6'1" in a custom-tailored black suit that cost enough to feed a neighborhood. His hair was slicked back with military precision. A tattoo of a dragon's neck crawled from his collarbone toward his jaw, partially visible above his crisp white collar, impossible to fully hide no matter how expensive the fabric. Sharp cheekbones that looked carved from stone. Eyes that had witnessed enough blood to drain the softness from any man's soul. And a presence so controlled, so deliberately restrained, that people instinctively gave him space even in a crowded room. 73 women had positioned themselves in his line of sight tonight. His second-in-command, Min-ho, had counted them all, kept making subtle gestures toward particularly beautiful ones, kept murmuring assessments like they were discussing real estate investments. That one's family owns half of Queens. That one's father sits on 3 corporate boards. That one speaks 4 languages and has a law degree from Yale. And Yoojun kept sipping whiskey he didn't taste, feeling like he was watching a theater production where everyone knew their blocking except him, where the script had been written before he arrived and his only role was to choose which actress would win the part of Mrs. Beck. The women were objectively beautiful, the kind of stunning that came from genetic lottery wins and expensive maintenance, the kind of women who graced magazine covers and married men who shaped policy and wars. They smiled with teeth whitened to impossible brightness. They touched his arm with calculated casualness. They laughed at things that weren't funny and leaned in at angles geometry professors could teach courses about. But Yoojun had spent 15 years surrounded by beautiful things designed to kill him. And he'd learned before his voice dropped that beauty was often just violence wearing prettier clothes. His father had taught him that truth right before arranging Yoojun's engagement to a rival boss's daughter who'd tried to poison him on their 3rd meeting. Right before Yoojun had taken control of the family at 23 and told his father that some traditions needed to be buried alongside the bodies they created. So he stood there, bored and hollow and planning which exit would get him out fastest, when the string quartet shifted to something in a minor key and the crowd near the service entrance parted for half a second. That's when he saw her. She wasn't a guest. Wasn't wearing silk or diamonds. Wasn't performing for anyone's attention at all. Just a waitress in the hotel's required uniform, black vest and bow tie, white shirt crisp despite hours of work, carrying a tray of champagne flutes through the crowd with a grace that came from necessity, not training. From surviving, not seducing. Her dark skin caught the light from the crystal chandeliers overhead like she was made of something the room's usual occupants could never afford. Her natural hair was pulled back in a low bun that was elegant in its simplicity, not trying to be anything but exactly what it was. Her expression was professionally neutral as she moved through the space between egos and agendas, invisible by design, protection through anonymity. Yoojun's gaze locked onto her automatically, the same way his eyes tracked anything that moved against the room's expected patterns. And he told himself it was tactical awareness, the same survival instinct that had kept him alive in a world where hesitation measured the difference between breathing and bleeding out on expensive carpet. She approached a cluster of investment bankers near the bar. Offered champagne with practiced efficiency. Someone said something, probably something forgettable or slightly inappropriate given their leering grins. And she smiled. That smile hit Yoo-jun like a bullet he hadn't seen coming. It wasn't practiced. Wasn't calculated. Wasn't designed to seduce or manipulate or extract anything valuable. Just genuine warmth breaking across her face for maybe 3 seconds, real and unguarded and absolutely devastating in its authenticity, before it disappeared back behind professional neutrality like a door closing. And Yoo-jun forgot how to breathe. He'd gone completely still. Whiskey glass frozen in his hand. Every muscle in his body locked on that moment, on that smile, on the way it had transformed her face from beautiful to something that threatened to crack open the concrete he'd poured around his chest years ago. And for the first time in 15 years of existing in rooms full of people who wanted to use him or kill him or both, Yoo-jun felt something. Before we start, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, smash that notification bell, and drop a comment telling me if you've ever had a moment that changed everything. And if you're watching from anywhere in the world right now, comment your country below. It truly means a lot to me seeing this community grow from every corner of the globe. Every view, every like, every share helps us keep bringing you these stories that make you feel something real, together. Now let's see what happens when a man who's felt nothing for years suddenly feels everything. The waitress turned, tray balanced with the kind of muscle memory that came from years of practice, and started walking back toward the service corridor. And Yoo-jun's feet moved before his brain gave permission, cutting through the crowd with the purposeful stride that made even drunk billionaires step aside instinctively, the same walk that preceded violence in darker rooms than this. But she disappeared through the staff door before he could reach her, swallowed by fluorescent lighting and the reality of the service industry, and Yoo-jun stood there in the middle of Manhattan's elite like a man who'd just watched his salvation walk away. Did you just? Min-ho appeared at his elbow, eyes wide behind expensive frames, voice pitched low with disbelief. Did you just chase service staff across the ballroom? I didn't chase anyone. Yoo-jun's voice came out rougher than intended, like he'd swallowed gravel. You walked past 73 women who've been throwing themselves at you all night, Min-ho said slowly, carefully, like he was explaining basic math to someone who'd suffered head trauma. Ignored every single one. And then moved like you were about to start a war to catch a waitress. Boss, I need to know if you're having some kind of medical emergency, because. Find out who she is. The words came out quiet. Deadly quiet. The kind of quiet that Min-ho had learned meant the conversation was over and orders were being given. Min-ho stared at him for 3 full seconds. Yoo-jun. You cannot be serious. The waitress. Yoo-jun's eyes stayed fixed on that service door, on the space where she'd been, on the absence that felt louder than the orchestra. Name. Address. Where she works. Everything. I want it by morning. You want me to run a background check on a woman who served you champagne you didn't drink? Yes. A woman you didn't even speak to? Yes. Because she smiled? Yoo-jun finally looked at Min-ho, and whatever his second-in-command saw in his face made him stop asking questions and pull out his phone instead, already typing, already making calls to people who made information appear like magic. Because when Yoo-jun wanted something, the universe had learned to bend or break, and breaking was always Messier. Yoo-jun turned back to the gala, to the 73 women still circulating like sharks who smelled blood in the water, still performing their rehearsed interest, still trying to catch the attention of a man who just stopped seeing any of them at all. And he felt nothing but impatience burning under his skin, urgency he couldn't name, a need to leave this room and find the woman who'd smiled like sunshine breaking through a lifetime of shadows. He had no idea that woman was about to dismantle every wall he'd built to survive. But he was about to learn. Her name was Patricia Crosby, and she had exactly 3 hours and 40 minutes left on her shift before she could go home, peel off these shoes that were actively committing crimes against her feet, and collapse into bed in her studio apartment in Harlem that she could barely afford even with 3 jobs running simultaneously. The Pierre gig was supposed to be premium money, 28 an hour plus tips for serving champagne to people who spent more on watch batteries than Patricia made in a week. But her feet disagreed violently with the financial assessment, and she was pretty sure the man in the corner had just tried to slip his hotel room key into her apron pocket along with a smile that made her skin want to crawl off her body. She'd smiled politely, removed the key without acknowledging it, and dropped it in the nearest bus tray because Patricia Crosby had 3 non-negotiable rules for surviving these high society events. 1. Smile like you mean it, even when you don't. 2. Make eye contact for exactly 2 seconds, not 3, never 3. 3. Never, ever accept anything from guests who look at you like you're dessert instead of staff. The ballroom was packed with Manhattan's version of royalty doing what Manhattan royalty did best, which was pretend to care about causes while really just measuring each other's net worth and trading information that moved markets. And Patricia moved through them like water through rock, inevitable and invisible, her tray balanced perfectly, her smile ready, her mind already running through tomorrow's impossible schedule. She had a morning shift at the coffee shop in Harlem, an afternoon audition for a commercial that would probably go to someone whose father knew someone, and an evening class for her business degree that she was taking 1 course per semester because that's all she could afford while still eating food and paying rent. And somewhere in there, she needed to sleep. And remember what it felt like to not be bone-tired every single day. "Excuse me, miss." An older woman dripping in diamonds that could probably fund a small nation gestured with the imperious wave of someone who'd never been told no in her entire life. Patricia moved toward her with her professional smile locked in place, delivered champagne, received no thank you, and moved on. Because invisible was safest. And Patricia had learned that lesson written in blood and grief. She'd grown up in Detroit, West Side, big dreams and bigger heart, the kind of girl who believed hard work and determination could move mountains if you just refused to quit. And then her older brother Malik had been killed in a drive-by at 24, wrong place and wrong time, caught between gangs fighting over territory that wasn't worth the bullets they wasted. She'd been 21. He'd been her hero, her protector, her proof that good people existed in bad situations. His death had taught her that violence didn't care about innocence. That loving someone connected to that world meant living with a target you couldn't see until it was too late. So when she'd moved to New York at 22, Patricia had made herself a promise written in her brother's memory: never date anyone involved in that life. Never put herself in that position. Never risk loving someone who might not come home because someone else decided they were a problem that needed solving. 4 years later at 26, Patricia was still fighting, still working herself to exhaustion, still showing up to auditions even though she hadn't booked anything significant in 8 months, still believing that eventually something would break her way. But some nights like tonight when her feet screamed and entitled rich people treated her like furniture they'd rented, she wondered if she was chasing something that didn't exist. If dreams were just pretty lies people told themselves to survive the grinding reality of never quite making it. The orchestra shifted to something sweeping and dramatic. And Patricia caught sight of herself in one of the massive mirrors lining the wall, saw the exhaustion she was hiding behind her professional mask, and made herself stand straighter. Lift her chin. Because giving up wasn't in her DNA. And no matter how hard things got, she would keep moving forward. Keep fighting. Keep refusing to let the world break her the way it had broken Malik. She delivered her last round of champagne and headed back toward the service entrance for a refill. That's when she felt it. That prickling awareness of being watched. The kind that made the hair on the back of your neck stand up. The kind that came from some primal part of your brain that remembered when humans were prey instead of predators. Patricia glanced over her shoulder, couldn't help herself. And saw him. Tall and devastatingly handsome in a way that felt dangerous, like beauty wrapped around something sharp. Dark eyes locked on her with an intensity that stole the air from her lungs. Standing in the middle of the ballroom like he'd forgotten where he was, like she was the only thing in focus and everything else had blurred into background noise. For just a second, their eyes met across the distance. And something electric passed between them, something that felt like recognition even though they'd never met, like her body knew him even though her mind had no idea who he was. Then Patricia blinked, shook it off, and pushed through the staff door into the harsh fluorescent reality of the service corridor. Because men who looked like that, and stood in ballrooms like this with that kind of presence, didn't notice women like her except as objects to use and discard. And she'd already learned that lesson. Already buried a brother who trusted the wrong people in the wrong world. She wasn't making that mistake. "Girl, you okay?" Her coworker Jasmine asked, loading her own tray with practiced efficiency. "You look like you saw a ghost or something." "Just tired." Patricia lied, but her heart was still racing, still caught on the way that man had looked at her. Like she mattered. Like she was real instead of invisible. 20 more minutes till break, Jasmine said. "Rich people tip better when they're drunk, so smile pretty and let's make this rent money." Patricia laughed, grabbed her refilled tray, and pushed back through the door into the ballroom. The man was gone. Disappeared into the crowd. And she told herself the weird flutter in her chest was relief, not disappointment. The rest of her shift passed in a blur of champagne and fake smiles and aching feet. And by the time Patricia finally made it home at 2 a.m, she'd almost forgotten about the man with the intense eyes and the visible tattoo crawling up his neck. Almost. But when she fell asleep, she dreamed of the way he'd looked at her. And woke up more confused than she'd felt in years. What Patricia didn't know was that across the city in a penthouse overlooking Central Park, Yoo-jun was staring at a file that contained her entire life. Name, address, work history, family background, everything. And he was already planning how to see her again. The universe was about to collide their worlds so violently that neither of them would survive unchanged. Patricia's morning shift at the Harlem coffee shop started at 6, which meant she was running on 4 hours of sleep and pure caffeine when the door chimed at 6:47 and he walked in. Yoo-jun. Even more devastating in dark jeans and a leather jacket than he'd been in his custom suit, looking completely out of place in the tiny neighborhood cafe where regulars came for cheap coffee and cheaper pastries. His dark eyes scanning the room until they landed on her behind the counter. And Patricia almost dropped the espresso she was making. Her heart stopped. Actually stopped. Because this couldn't be coincidence. Couldn't be random. This man from the Pierre showing up at her cafe in Harlem at 6:47 in the morning. "What can I get you?" She kept her voice professional even though her heart was trying to escape her chest, even though alarm bells were ringing in her head loud enough to drown out the espresso machine. "Coffee." His voice was deeper than she'd expected, rough like he hadn't slept either. "Black. No sugar." Patricia rang him up, made his coffee with hands that shook slightly, and slid it across the counter. And when their fingers brushed during the exchange, electricity shot up her arm like she'd touched a live wire. "You were at the Pierre last night." Not a question. A statement. "I work events sometimes," Patricia said carefully, because alarm bells were now screaming. Because normal people didn't track down waitresses to random neighborhood cafes unless they wanted something. "Did I forget to give you your champagne or something?" "No." Something that might have been amusement flickered in his eyes. "I wanted to see you again." The honesty of it startled her. Made her defenses crack just slightly. "Why?" "Because you smiled." Yoo-jun said it simply, like it explained everything. And it was the most real thing I'd seen in years. Patricia's breath caught. Because that was either the most romantic thing anyone had ever said to her, or the most effective line she'd ever heard. And she couldn't tell which. "I smile at everyone," she said. "It's part of the job description." "Not like that." Yoo-jun's gaze held hers. "Not like you meant it." Before Patricia could respond, her manager called her name from the back, needing help with the morning rush that was starting to build. And she had to turn away, had to focus on orders and customers and not the man who'd somehow found her cafe and was saying things that made her chest ache with possibility. But when she looked back 10 minutes later, Yoo-jun was still there. Sitting at a corner table, coffee untouched, just watching her work with that same intense focus from the gala. And Patricia didn't know whether to be flattered or terrified. Her shift ended at noon. She changed out of her apron in the back room, expecting him to be gone. Hoping he'd be gone. Terrified he'd be gone. But Yoo-jun was waiting outside when she pushed through the door, leaning against a black Mercedes that probably cost more than her student loans and rent combined for the next decade. "This is creepy," Patricia said bluntly, even though her traitorous heart was doing backflips. "You showing up at my work? Waiting for me? This is literally stalker behavior." "You're right." Yoo-jun agreed immediately, which somehow made it worse. "I'm sorry. I couldn't stop thinking about you. And I wanted to see if that moment at the gala was real or if I'd imagined it." "What moment?" "The one where time stopped," Yoo-jun said quietly. And there was something so vulnerable in his expression that Patricia's defenses cracked a little wider. "I walked past 73 women last night and didn't see any of them. Then you smiled and I forgot my own name." "That's a line," Patricia said. But she was smiling despite herself. "It's the truth." Yoo-jun took a step closer, careful, like he was approaching something wild that might run. "Have lunch with me. Just lunch. 1 hour. If you hate it, I'll leave you alone forever. You'll never see me again." Patricia knew she should say no. Should walk away. Should not get involved with mysterious rich men who tracked her down like private investigators. But there was something in his eyes that looked almost desperate. Almost lonely. Like he was drowning and she was air. And she'd always been a sucker for things that needed saving. 1 hour, she heard herself say. "And you're buying." Yoo-jun's smile was beautiful and relieved and genuine. And Patricia realized she was in so much trouble. Lunch turned into 3.5 hours at a tiny Ethiopian place 4 blocks from her apartment. Talking about everything and nothing. And Patricia discovered that beneath the expensive clothes and intense exterior, Yoo-jun was funny in a dry way that caught her off guard. Self-deprecating. Carrying sadness in his eyes that he tried to hide behind charm but couldn't quite manage. He told her about growing up between 2 worlds, Korean and American, never quite fitting in either. About pressure from family to be someone he wasn't sure he wanted to be. About feeling like his life had been mapped out before he was old enough to have opinions about the route. Patricia told him about Detroit, about dreams of acting that were slowly being ground down by the reality of New York. About working 3 jobs and still barely surviving. About refusing to give up even when giving up would be so much easier. "You're extraordinary," Yoo-jun said when they finally left the restaurant, the afternoon sun making his skin glow. And he said it like he meant it, like he wasn't just trying to get something from her. "I'm exhausted," Patricia corrected, but she was smiling. "Can I see you again?" Yoo-jun asked. "Tomorrow? Tonight? Whenever you're free." "I have an audition tomorrow," Patricia said. "And a class tomorrow night. What about Wednesday afternoon?" Yoo-jun asked immediately. Patricia laughed, started to say yes. Then stopped. Because this was moving too fast. Because she didn't know anything about him really. Because men like him didn't fall for women like her without an angle. "What do you do?" she asked suddenly. "For work." "You never said." Yoo-jun's expression shuddered. Closed like a door slamming. "Business. Import-export. Family company." "That's vague," Patricia observed, watching him carefully. "It's complicated," Yoo-jun said. And there was something in his voice that sounded like warning. "Is it legal?" The question hung between them like smoke. Yoo-jun was quiet for a long moment. Then. "Mostly." And there it was. The truth she'd suspected. The danger she'd sensed underneath all that charm. I should go. Patricia said, taking a step back. Patricia, wait. I don't date criminals. She said firmly, even though her heart was screaming at her to stay. To give him a chance. To see where this impossible thing could go. Even reformed ones. Even ones who look at me like that. It's not, Eugene started. Then what is it? Patricia challenged. Tell me the truth right now or I walk away and you never contact me again. Eugene looked at her. Really looked at her. And she saw him making a choice. Saw him decide to risk everything. My family runs one of the largest Korean organized crime operations in New York. He said quietly, each word careful and deliberate. I inherited it when I was 23 after my father had a stroke. I've spent the last 8 years trying to make it legitimate, to clean up what he built. But that takes time. And in the meantime, yes, some of what we do operates in gray areas. I've done things I'm not proud of. I'll probably have to do more before it's done. But Patricia, I swear to you, I would never hurt you. Never put you in danger. Never. Stop. Patricia interrupted. Because her world was tilting. Because this man she'd been falling for was apparently an actual crime boss. Because this only happened in movies, not real life. I need to think. Take all the time you need. Eugene said. But know this. From the moment you smiled at me, something changed. I changed. And I'm not giving up on this unless you tell me to. Then he got in his expensive car and drove away. And Patricia stood on the Harlem sidewalk trying to figure out if she just dodged a bullet or walked away from something extraordinary. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. For what it's worth, I walked past 73 perfect women and saw nothing. Then I saw you. That has to mean something. Why? Patricia stared at the message. At her shaking hands. At the choice stretching out in front of her. Say yes and risk everything. Say no and always wonder what if. She typed back, Wednesday afternoon. 2 p.m., you pick the place. But it better not be anywhere dangerous or expensive. And you're going to tell me everything, Eugene. Every truth, no matter how ugly. His response came immediately, deal. Thank you for giving me a chance. Patricia didn't know if she was brave or stupid. But she knew she wasn't walking away from this. Not yet. Not when his smile haunted her dreams and his words made her believe in impossible things. Wednesday afternoon found Patricia standing in front of a community center in the Bronx, staring at the address Eugene had sent, completely confused. Because this was not what she'd expected. The building was old but well maintained, with kids streaming in and out. And through the windows, she could see what looked like a martial arts class in session. And absolutely nothing about this screamed criminal empire. You came. Eugene's voice said behind her. She turned to find him in workout clothes, hair slightly damp like he'd been exercising, looking more human and less untouchable than she'd ever seen him. This is where you wanted to meet? Patricia asked. I volunteer here 3 times a week. Eugene said. Teaching Taekwondo to kids from the neighborhood. Keeps them off the streets. Gives them discipline. Community. I figured if you wanted to see the real me, you should see this part too. And just like that, Patricia's heart cracked open a little more. They sat on the steps outside while kids practiced inside. And Eugene told her everything. About his father building an empire on violence and fear. About his older brother being killed in a gang war when Eugene was 20, leaving him to inherit a world he'd never wanted. About spending the last 8 years trying to transition the family business into legitimate operations, investing in real estate and tech startups and legal import companies. But still having to deal with the old guard who wanted to keep making money the bloody way. I've killed people. Yoojun said quietly, not looking at her. In self-defense. Protecting my family. But still. I've done things that would make you run if you knew the details. I'm not a good man, Patricia. I'm trying to be better. But I'm not there yet. Why are you telling me this? Patricia asked, voice shaking. Because you deserve the truth. Yoojun said. And because I won't build something with you on lies. If you walk away, I'll understand. But I won't let you walk away without knowing exactly who I am. Patricia was quiet for a long time. Watching kids laugh through the window. Feeling the weight of Yoojun's confession settling over her like snow. My brother was killed in a gang shooting. She said finally. 5 years ago in Detroit. Wrong place, wrong time. He was just walking home from work and got caught in crossfire between two groups fighting over territory. He was 24. I was 21. It destroyed our family. Yoojun's hand found hers. Squeezed gently. I'm sorry. I swore I'd never have anything to do with that world. Patricia continued. Never date anyone involved in violence. Never put myself in that position. Never risk loving someone who might not come home. So this, it's everything I promised myself I'd avoid. I understand. Yoojun said. And she could hear him preparing to let her go, to accept her rejection with grace. But, Patricia said. And watched hope flicker in his eyes. You're not your father. You're trying to change things. You're teaching kids taekwondo and transitioning to legitimate business and telling me the truth even though it might make me leave. That's not nothing, Yoojun. It's not enough. Yoojun said. Not to make up for what I've done. Maybe not. Patricia agreed. But it's a start. And maybe, I don't know. Maybe we could start there. See where it goes. No promises. No expectations. Just honest. Honest. Yoojun repeated. And his smile was so full of relief it made her chest ache. They spent the afternoon together. Patricia watching Yoojun teach, seeing how the kids responded to him with respect and affection. How he was firm but kind. How he made them feel capable and strong. And she saw a version of him that had nothing to do with crime families and everything to do with who he wanted to be. You're good at this. Patricia said as they walked to the subway later. You should do more of it. I want to. Yoojun admitted. I want to open centers all over the city. Give kids alternatives. Create programs. But my father thinks it's a waste of resources. Says I should focus on the family business. On maintaining power. What do you think? I think power is worthless if you're not using it to make things better. Yoojun said. I think my father built an empire but lost his soul doing it. And I don't want to make the same mistake. They reached the subway entrance. And Yoojun caught her hand. Can I take you to dinner? Somewhere nice. Let me show you that I can do normal dates, not just confessing my crimes on community center steps. Patricia laughed. Okay. But nowhere too fancy. I don't own ball gowns. You're perfect exactly as you are. Yoojun said. And kissed her hand like she was something precious. That night at a rooftop restaurant overlooking Manhattan, Patricia felt like she was living someone else's life. The city sparkled below them. Yoojun looked at her like she hung the stars. And for the first time in 5 years, she let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, something good could happen. I'm scared. She admitted over dessert. Of this. Of you. Of how fast I'm falling. I'm terrified. Yoojun said honestly. Because I've never felt like this before. Because you make me want to be better than I am. Because I'm pretty sure I was walking through my life half dead until you smiled at me. That's a lot of pressure for one smile. Patricia said. But she was smiling now. That real, genuine smile that had started all of this. Then keep smiling. Yoojun said. And I'll keep trying to deserve it. But across the city in a smoke-filled office in Koreatown, Yoojun's father was looking at surveillance photos of his son with a black waitress. And his expression was cold enough to freeze blood. End it. He told his lieutenant. I don't care how. Make the girl disappear. My son has responsibilities that matter more than his feelings. The order was given. The trap was set. And neither Yoojun nor Patricia had any idea that their happiness had an expiration date measured in days, not years. Patricia knew something was wrong when her roommate opened the apartment door with tears streaming down her face. They came looking for you. Her roommate whispered. 2 hours ago. Big guys in expensive suits. Said they had a message. Patricia's blood turned to ice. What message? That you need to stop seeing Yoojun. Or there will be consequences. Her roommate's voice broke. Patricia, they knew everything. Where you work. Where you go to school. Your mom's address in Detroit. They said accidents happen to people who don't listen. Patricia sank onto the couch, hands shaking. Because this was it. This was the reality she'd been afraid of. The violence she'd sworn to avoid. Her brother's face flashed through her mind, his funeral, the promise she'd made standing over his grave. She called Yoojun. He answered on the first ring. Your father's men came to my apartment. Patricia said without preamble, voice shaking with rage and fear. They threatened me. Threatened my family. Yoojun, I can't do this. I can't live looking over my shoulder, wondering if today's the day someone decides I'm too much of a distraction. Where are you? Yoojun's voice was deadly calm. The kind of calm that preceded violence. I'm coming to get you right now. You're not safe there. I'm not safe anywhere in your world. Patricia said, tears streaming down her face. Don't you see? This is exactly what I was afraid of. Your father will never accept me. He'll keep escalating until someone gets hurt. Until I end up like Malik. Then I'll deal with my father. Yoojun said. Patricia, please. Just wait for me. No. Patricia interrupted. I'm sorry, Yoojun. I'm so sorry. But I can't do this. I can't risk my family. Can't risk my life. Can't be the reason you go to war with your own father. This was beautiful, but it's over. Don't do this. Yoojun's voice cracked. Actually cracked. Don't let him win. He already won. Patricia whispered. The moment he threatened the people I love, he won. Goodbye, Yoojun. She hung up before he could respond. Blocked his number before he could call back. And collapsed on her couch, sobbing while her roommate held her. Across the city, Yoojun stared at his phone, at the blocked call screen, and felt something inside him shatter. Then he stood, grabbed his keys, and drove to his father's office with murder in his eyes. You threatened her. Yoojun said, slamming through his father's door without knocking, not caring that a meeting was in session. You sent men to her apartment. His father dismissed the room with a wave. Waited until they were alone. Then looked at his son with cold eyes. I protected you from a distraction. She wasn't a distraction. Yoojun said, voice shaking with barely controlled rage. She was everything. She was a waitress. His father said dismissively. Ain't nobody who would have dragged you down. Made you weak. Compromised everything we've built. I don't care about what we've built. Yoojun shouted. I never wanted this empire. Never asked to be your heir. Never agreed to sacrifice my entire life for your legacy. Then you're a fool. His father said coldly. This empire is all we have. It's who we are. And I won't let you destroy it for some girl you've known for 2 weeks. I love her. Yoo-jun said. And saying it out loud made it more real, more devastating. I love her and you took her from me. Then you'll learn to unlove her. His father said. Because she's gone. And if you try to contact her again, if you put her in danger by refusing to let go, I will make sure the consequences fall on her, not you. Stay away from the girl, Yoo-jun. It's the only way to keep her safe. The words hit Yoo-jun like bullets. Because they were true. Because going after Patricia now would only paint a bigger target on her back. Because loving her meant letting her go. He left his father's office feeling hollowed out. Empty. And drove to the community center where he stood in the empty practice room trying to remember who he'd been before a smile had changed everything. His phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. I'm sorry. I wish things were different. Be safe, Yoo-jun. She'd unblocked him long enough to send one message. One goodbye. And Yoo-jun felt tears he hadn't cried since his brother died tracked down his face. 3 months passed like years. Patricia threw herself into work, into auditions, into anything that would stop her from thinking about Yoo-jun. But every love song on the radio felt like an attack. Every couple she saw felt like a reminder of what she'd lost. And she couldn't walk past Ethiopian restaurants without her chest aching. She finally booked a commercial. A small victory. But it felt empty without anyone to celebrate with. Without Yoo-jun's proud smile and the way he'd called her extraordinary. Across the city, Yoo-jun was a ghost. Going through the motions of running the empire but feeling nothing. Teaching classes at the center, but his smile never reaching his eyes. Existing, but not living. Min-ho tried to set him up with other women. Yoo-jun couldn't even look at them. Couldn't see anyone except the waitress who'd smiled and changed his entire world. You have to move on. Min-ho said carefully. She's not coming back. I know. Yoo-jun said. But he didn't know how to move on when part of his soul had walked away with her. Then Yoo-jun's father had a massive heart attack. Unexpected. Devastating. And when Yoo-jun sat in the hospital waiting room at 4 in the morning, the only thing he could think was that life was too short. Too fragile. Too precious to waste on fear. His father survived. But the doctor was clear, retire or the next one will kill him. And just like that, the empire was fully Yoo-jun's. No more old guard to answer to. No more threats hanging over his head. No more father controlling every move. The first thing Yoo-jun did was call off every operation that wasn't completely legitimate. The second thing was to set up a foundation for at-risk youth, funding community centers across the city. The third thing was to try to find Patricia. But she'd moved. Changed jobs. Disappeared so completely it was like she'd never existed. And Yoo-jun spent 3 more months searching before accepting that maybe she didn't want to be found. He was teaching a class at the center 6 months after she'd walked away when he looked up and saw her standing in the doorway. Patricia. Thinner than before. Exhaustion in her eyes. But that same strength in her spine. Watching him with an expression he couldn't read. The world stopped spinning. Everything disappeared except her. Yoo-jun dismissed the class early. Didn't care about protocol. Just needed to talk to her. Needed to understand why she was here after 6 months of silence. They sat on the steps outside, the same place they'd sat when he'd told her the truth about his life. The afternoon sun gentle on their faces. Your father had a heart attack. Patricia said. I saw it in the news. Is he okay? He's alive. Yoo-jun said. Retired. Moved to Connecticut. Doctor's orders. So you're in charge now? Completely? Yes. Yoo-jun said. And the business is legitimate. All of it. I spent the last 6 months cleaning house. Ending contracts. Transitioning everything. We're just a real estate and investment company now. No more gray areas. That must have been hard. Patricia said softly. It was necessary. Yoo-jun said. After losing you, I realized that building something on fear and violence wasn't worth it. You showed me there was a better way. Silence fell between them, heavy with everything unsaid. Why are you here? Yoo-jun asked finally. Because he couldn't take the not knowing. Couldn't handle the hope rising in his chest that might get crushed. Because I couldn't stop thinking about you. Patricia admitted. Because I booked a national commercial and the first person I wanted to call was you. Because I've been miserable for 6 months and I kept telling myself I did the right thing, but it feels like I did the most wrong thing possible. You did do the right thing. Yoo-jun said gently. My father would have hurt you. You had to protect yourself. But he's gone now. Patricia said. And you've changed everything. I read about your foundation. About the centers you're opening. About the scholarships for kids from low-income families. You're doing exactly what you said you wanted to do. Doesn't change the past. Yoo-jun said. Doesn't change what I've done. No. Patricia agreed. But it shows who you're trying to be. And I think I want to be part of that. If you'll have me. If I haven't completely destroyed everything by running away. Yoo-jun looked at her. Really looked at her. And saw his future in her eyes. You called me extraordinary once. Patricia continued. But Yoo-jun, you're the extraordinary one. You walked past 73 perfect women and saw me. You told me the truth even when it could have cost you everything. You changed your entire life. Cleaned up an empire. Chose to be better. That's not nothing. It's not enough. Yoo-jun said. Not to deserve you. How about we decide together what's enough? Patricia suggested. How about we try this again? For real this time. With no threats hanging over us. No secrets between us. Just us. Are you sure? Yoo-jun asked. Because Patricia, if we do this again, I'm not letting you go. I'm all in. Forever. No more walking away when things get hard. I'm sure. Patricia said. I've never been more sure of anything. I love you, Yoo-jun. I fought it. Ran from it. Tried to bury it. But I love you. And I want to try. Yoo-jun pulled her into his arms and kissed her like he'd been dying without her. Like she was oxygen and he'd been drowning for 6 months. And Patricia kissed him back just as desperately, pouring every lonely night and every missed moment into it. I love you. Yoo-jun breathed against her lips. I've loved you since the moment you smiled. I'll love you until the day I die. That's very dramatic. Patricia said, laughing through tears. I'm a dramatic person. Yoo-jun admitted. Apparently walking past supermodels and chasing waitresses is my thing. They sat on those steps until sunset, talking about everything they'd missed, making plans for a future that finally felt possible. And when Yoo-jun finally drove Patricia home, he didn't want to let her go. Tomorrow? He asked. Tomorrow. She agreed. And the day after that. And the day after that. Forever? Yoo-jun asked. Forever. Patricia promised. 1 year later, Patricia stood in front of a mirror in a simple white dress, her best friend adjusting her veil. And she thought about how strange life was. How one smile at a charity gala had led to this. To marrying a man who had walked past 73 women and frozen when he saw her. "You ready?" her friend asked. "So ready," Patricia said. The ceremony was small. Just close friends and family at the community center where they'd fallen in love. And when Patricia walked down the makeshift aisle, Yoojun was crying. Not even trying to hide it. Looking at her like she was a miracle. "You smiled at me," Yoojun said when she reached him. "And my entire world changed." "You froze," Patricia said, smiling that same smile. "And I fell in love with a man who sees me." They said their vows. Promised forever. Kissed while their friends cheered. And when they walked back down the aisle as husband and wife, the kids from Yoojun's taekwondo class threw flower petals and made ridiculous faces. And it was perfect. Absolutely perfect. No regrets? Yoojun asked as they drove to the reception. "Not a single one," Patricia said. "You. Only that I didn't freeze sooner," Yoojun admitted. "Could have had an extra week with you. We have the rest of our lives," Patricia reminded him. "True," Yoojun said, pulling her close. "And I'm going to spend every single day making sure you never stop smiling." At the reception, as they danced to their first song as husband and wife, Patricia looked up at this man who'd changed his entire world for her. Who'd walked past perfection and chosen real. And felt her heart overflow. "What are you thinking?" Yoojun asked. "That I'm glad I smiled," Patricia said. "That I'm glad you froze. That I'm glad we collided." "Me too," Yoojun whispered. "Me too." And somewhere in Manhattan, in a ballroom very much like the one where they'd met, 73 women were being photographed and admired and pursued. And not a single one of them knew that the man who'd walked past them all had found something infinitely more precious than perfection. He'd found love. Real, messy, complicated, beautiful love. And it all started with a smile.